Food security is one of this century's most important global challenges. By 2050, given current trends, the world will need to produce significantly more food in order to feed its predicted 9 billion people. At the same time, diets are changing around the world, climate change is altering the environment in which food is produced, and land and water are becoming more scarce. The challenge is for the food system to produce more food whilst sustaining the environment, preserving natural resources and biodiversity, and supporting the livelihoods of farmers and rural populations around the world. There are many potential solutions to the challenge of food security, and most food researchers agree that no one solution will be sufficient. We can think of the possible solutions in terms of three themes. At the moment, the world produces enough food to feed the current population, but as many as 1 billion people are chronically hungry, at the same time as 1 billion people are overnourished, and millions are suffering health problems related to obesity. Managing demand means changing the type and amount of food that is required to feed the population. For example, we know that producing a certain amount of calories from meat takes more resources than producing the same amount of calories from food crops. So reducing demand for animal products could lead to a more efficient food system in some ways. Not all of the food that is currently produced ends up being eaten, either because it is wasted before it can be eaten, or because it does not reach the people who need it. For example, a large proportion of food is wasted in the food chain because poor storage means it's spoiled. Improving the way in which food is stored and distributed could reduce waste. If demand continues as it is, we will need to produce more food in the future. But some methods of food production can have negative impacts on the environment, which in turn reduces the capacity of the planet to produce food. Increasing food production needs to take these impacts into account and be done in ways which are sustainable. For example, finding more space for food production, such as through converting forests to agriculture. However, this comes at significant environmental costs. Other ways of using new space, such as urban agriculture, are unlikely to produce enough. This suggests that if we are to grow significantly more food, it should be on the land we already use. Changing the way in which food is produced to increase the amount of food that can be produced with the same inputs, such as land, fertilizer, and energy, but without harming the environment. This is referred to as sustainable intensification and is the topic for this activity. Sustainable intensification is a difficult approach to define, and specialists are still debating exactly what it means. One definition used recently is sustainably increasing the production of food combined with improved resource use efficiency and better environmental outcomes. There are different ways in which production can be increased. One way to increase food production is to choose crop varieties which are more efficient. For example, a crop whose roots absorb water more efficiently could increase the amount of food produced in the same field without requiring more water. Another approach is to change farming practices to use resources more efficiently. For example, targeting fertilizer inputs in each small area of land, rather than putting the same amount on across the field. This precision agriculture would reduce air and water pollution. Another way of sustainably intensifying food production is to change where it is grown. For example, we could grow more intensively where the land is most suitable, and leave land to nature so that it benefits biodiversity where it is less suited to crop growing. This smart land use could apply within a farm, or landscape, or at the country level. Sustainable intensification might sound like a perfect solution to feeding the world and protecting the environment, but in practice there are important decisions to make. While some people see sustainable intensification as a way to reduce hunger, others question whether it is just a label given to the same old intensive farming, or suggest that it will distract governments and others from problems like food waste and changing diets. There are also questions about what impact sustainable intensification might have around the world. The impact may be different in countries like the UK, where much of our agriculture is already quite intensive, and in other countries where some of the approaches we use are not as common. For example, sustainable intensification might mean changes to the type of food produced in an area to use crops that have lower impacts. In the UK, we might not notice changes to what's sold in our supermarkets, because much of our food is imported from other countries. But in an area where people have less access to imported food, it could affect their everyday diet. A farmer could improve the yield of their crops by changing the way they manage water on an individual farm. If the farmer uses more water, this could mean less water for use elsewhere. If they increase drainage, it could increase the risk of flooding by speeding up river flow. If a farmer is intensifying to grow more food on their farm, they might need to use more inputs, even if they are increasing efficiency. These inputs could be fertilisers, which can pollute rivers, or pesticides, which can affect beneficial insects like bees or butterflies, as well as the birds that feed on them. If the UK took the approach of concentrating food production in the most suitable land areas, this could have a significant effect on those areas of the countryside. Areas that are intensifying could have larger farms and fields and larger herds of cows. This would have implications both for the appearance of the countryside and the local economy. Another challenge for sustainable intensification is to decide what counts as sustainable. It's easy to think of sustainability as reducing environmental impacts like pollution. But when researchers talk about sustainability, they are often referring to a much broader picture. Sustainability can include social and economic impacts, like the farming economy, human health impacts, and how well an agricultural system can stand up to shocks like extreme weather or price hikes, as well as whether we are leaving the world in a good state for future generations. When sustainability encompasses all of these aspects, it's difficult to find approaches to food production that works well for all of them. That's where we get trade-offs between the different aspects. For example, increasing productivity of livestock farming has often involved more animals in a smaller area and housed inside. This may reduce the environmental impact, for example by using less land, but reduce animal welfare by housing animals in more cramped conditions. How do we balance the environmental impact with the ethical concern? A farmer may be able to grow a high-value food crop which guarantees them a good income and has nutritional benefits for consumers, but requires so much water to grow well that local water sources are depleted. How do we balance the social benefits to health and economy with the environment? The Global Food Security Programme, who fund this panel, help influence what public sector research is carried out in the UK, including what types of sustainable intensification should be the main areas of focus. They want to understand your views on this topic to help them set a long-term strategy for this research, and that's what we'll be exploring in this.